Let's get started and bring on a registered licensed dietitian nutritionist, Shira Hirshberg. She is joining us from All Foods Nutrition. Shira, come on in.
Hi, Molly.
Hello. So we're talking snakes back there. Are you a snake fan?
Not a huge one, but I don't mind them that much.
You don't mind them that much.
Yeah.
So luckily you're not going to have to hang out for too long with the snakes. I'm personally very excited. So today we are going to talk about we're going to talk about preconception and prenatal nutrition.
Sure are.
And congratulations, you are very close to giving birth to your second child. That's why.
I am, yes. I figured this is a good time to talk about it. I'm 33 weeks pregnant, so for those of you who know, that's about 8 months. Who don't know, the weeks, that's about 8 months pregnant. So I figured this is as good a time as any to chat about this topic.
I think this is a great thing, and so many people know or are interested in that prenatal nutrition, but not necessarily think about the preconception.
Yeah, and I think preconception nutrition is an area that we really need to spend more time on as a community because prevention is our new focus, right, in healthcare. That's the idea out there. That ideally we want to prevent medical problems before they occur instead of dealing with them afterwards. And this is a great opportunity to do that for both moms and babies because it's literally before this baby even exists. We can start working with mom and dad to make changes and get them both set up to be the healthiest parents that they can and get that baby off to the healthiest start in life that they can. And we know that, if you go into a pregnancy healthfully, it will make a big difference for your baby, both in terms of the pregnancy and any complications, but also actually in their childhood and later adult life.
Oh, wow. So it starts even before conception.
Yep. The very beginning matters.
Wow. So it's really important to start that healthy lifestyle before you're even planning a family.
Yeah, and it's not that it's a bad idea to say, oh, I'm pregnant, I should think about how I'm eating. Absolutely, you should, but ideally, if you're somebody who is going to plan your pregnancy, it's even better to think about it beforehand so that you're not saying, oh gosh, now I'm pregnant, I have all these things to think about, I have OB appointments, I have to prepare for a new baby, and I should think about what I'm eating. That's a lot.
It is a lot to think about.
The fact that you can do this ahead of time is nice.
I like that. Okay, so what are some things, we're talking a little bit about why it's important to start this process now. What are some things you can do to start getting healthy what are some things you can do?
Yeah, so when we talk about kind of general preconception nutrition, a lot of the things aren't going to be a big shocker. So, if you think about being at a healthy weight, that's one of the things that's important. It's harder to conceive both when you're underweight and when you're overweight or obese. And then also you have better outcomes if you start at a healthy weight. And it also helps prevent complications like high blood pressure during pregnancy, gestational diabetes, low blood sugar levels in baby at birth, induced labor, having a baby who's too large, having a child who's at greater risk of being overweight, preterm birth, stillbirth, shorter time breastfeeding. So all this kind of stuff, your risk is lower if you start your pregnancy at a normal weight.
Oh,
so,
okay.
And that we decide that by BMI, but BMI is not the best indicator for every individual. But that's kind of the general way we look at the population is height and weight and what's your BMI end up.
Okay, so it's important to start that healthy, active lifestyle sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and
for you and for baby.
It doesn't mean if you're 100 pounds overweight, you have to lose all that weight before you have a baby. Of course, it doesn't work that way. But, even somebody who's very obese, if you lose, I think it's 20 pounds, then that makes you much more likely to conceive. So even small changes make a difference. It doesn't mean everyone has to be at its exact BMI, but working on making healthier changes is a good thing. So when we talk about kind of what food things matter, well-balanced diet, fruits, vegetables, calcium-rich foods and protein. So a lot of the basics we've covered of course are important for preconception nutrition. Iron is important because a lot of people do become anemic during pregnancy. So thinking about having regular iron-rich foods. Folic acid is one of those things that's really important if you are actively trying to get pregnant or not preventing it. And most people get that in a multivitamin. We actually absorb it better in a synthetic form from a vitamin than we do from food.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we get folic acid in other ways, but we do recommend that anyone who's potentially going to conceive have a supplement that has 400 micrograms of folic acid. So that's any women's multivitamin.
Okay.
but it has to be specifically for women.
Okay.
That will definitely contain that. Doesn't mean no other ones will, but you can be sure about it. A prenatal one has even more, but a regular general one. And actually, really, they say women of childbearing age should have a supplement with 400 micrograms of folic acid. The reason is because 50% of pregnancies are unplanned, and so we're not always, planning and preparing ahead of time, and that also it's not going to be harmful to take that. And neural tube defects are the thing we're trying to prevent. Neural tube defects are things like spina bifida, problems with the spine not closing correctly. They're really important.
Okay.
And so that's why prevention is important, because those things start right at the beginning of pregnancy before you know you're pregnant. So you can't necessarily prevent those after the fact.
So just keeping it on a regimen, taking a daily vitamin, that's not that hard.
Yep.
So whether you're
planning. You can even find those in a gummy multivitamin, which are delicious.
Love the gummies.
So most people don't mind that one.
Yeah, exactly. So just kind of getting on that regimen. So if, you're not planning and some, yay, you're starting to have a family.
If it's possible that you could get pregnant,
yeah, it's already
vitamin.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, exactly. Great. So those are some things that you can do on the preconception side. As we start moving towards the prenatal side, what are some things we can look at there?
Sure. So if we kind of think about what's important for most people, I would say when we first think about it, it's okay, who needs to definitely get more nutritional care? And that's people who have complications. In a perfect world, every pregnant woman would go see a dietitian at least once, because there's a lot to think about. There's a lot of recommendations, and most OB providers don't spend a lot of time on the food aspect of things. So I really think it's helpful for people to at least have that one visit, even if they don't have complications. But if you have specific complications, then it's really important to have regular nutrition visits. Things, of course, like I said, folic acid is one of the key ones, but in general, there's a lot of specific nutrients of concern. A lot of this gets into micronutrients, right, which is stuff we haven't talked about that much, but things like iron, there's some kind of strange ones like choline that you might not have heard about before. Iodine actually is important in pregnancy, and so iodized salt, like your normal table salt, is actually a good thing during pregnancy. You don't want to do like the fancy sea salt that's not iodized. Just go for regular iodized salt.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, downsides of fancy sea salt. No iodine. They do have iodized sea salt. You can get that too. But.
So it's like even fancier sea salt, apparently. I do want to backtrack just one moment, because when we're talking about for the preconception, you made an interesting point that I don't think we made on camera, that it's important for both participating parties to have this healthy lifestyle going into it. So it's important for mom and dad.
It absolutely is important for mom and dad. The healthy weight is relevant for mom and dad. When both partners are at a healthy weight, it's easier to conceive. And even without that that issue, men starting everything being healthy and eating well is also important for better outcomes. So guys, you matter too.
Yeah, so I found that very interesting and important it can help, you did mention this with the fertility side of things, so considering the nutrition, so it's not just for the person carrying the baby,
Sperm matters too.
It counts. It counts. So I found that interesting. I wanted to make sure we went to that point. Okay, so you're talking about if you have the chance to visit a nutritionist while you are pregnant, it's a good idea. And then continuing on, what are some other aspects that you can look into on that prenatal side? What's some important things that people should be eating or looking into with their diet? What are some things that are super important that you need to make sure you're consuming?
Sure. So omega-3 fatty acids is one of the big ones. There are a lot, if you're looking at prenatal vitamins, a lot of ones with DHA. There's a recommendation that every pregnant woman have 200 micrograms of DHA a day. And the thing about that is that you can get it in that supplement, or you can take a regular one, take a separate supplement with that in there, a fish oil, something like that. Also, you can eat fish.
Yeah,
I always love the whole food version. So salmon, tuna, fatty fish like that. And there are also vegetarian and vegan sources as well. And I work with actually a lot of vegan pregnant moms because they have to be, more careful about certain nutrients in pregnancy. But fish is a great source, so eating those regularly is one of the things that can be great. In terms of standard, most people are thinking about the food restrictions.
Yeah.
And so there are a bunch of those out there. One book that I like that goes through everything is this guy. So there's 2 books I'm going to talk about now. One I have with me. This one is Expect the Best, Your Guide to Healthy Eating Before, During, and After Pregnancy. It's written by dietitians and published by the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics, which is our professional organization. This one is a great overview of all of the basics that you need to know. And then the other one is actually a little bit different. It's called Expecting Better. It's written by an economist.
Oh.
And she didn't appreciate the way pregnant women are kind of just given this like list of things they have to do, but not a lot of detail about what's the evidence behind this, like what choices do I feel more important about. And so she reviews all of the evidence, explains her choices and why. And so I really like that book, and it helped me think a little differently about some of the food restrictions that you'll see if you just Google what to eat while I'm pregnant.
Which is so just
don't eat lunch meat, don't eat this, don't eat that. There's a lot of don'ts in there. So I think reading a couple of books can be really useful for moms because there's a lot to think about in terms of the restrictions.
Okay. You did mention to me one thing that expecting moms should just avoid in general that I think is pretty important.
Avoid in general. Sorry, now I'm like, where did I have that?
The artificial sweetener.
Oh, yes, that was an interesting one. So, most artificial sweeteners are safe in pregnancy, but saccharin actually is problematic because that actually will get to the baby itself. You know, the question is what can be transported from mom to baby, and saccharin actually can be, so they say to avoid that artificial sweetener specifically.
Okay.
And then also stevia. Only one form of stevia has been approved for pregnancy by the FDA. So that's an interesting thing to think about. It's called Reb-A, like R-E-B, capital A. That one has been approved, so if you see that, that's great, but there's a bunch of other forms of stevia that have not. So, wow. Saccharin, stevia, the sweeteners to think about. So regular sugar, don't have a lot, but it's fine.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So maybe just stick with basic sugar.
Yeah.
Just not a lot of it.
Yeah. I think that's a good...
Eat strawberries.
Reasonable. Fruit is always a good choice.
Just eat strawberries.
So other things that generally pregnant moms should be thinking about are calcium. Calcium's a big one because baby will get what baby needs, but that means your bones are going to suffer. So if you want to come out of your pregnancy as strong-boned as you went in, you need to consume enough calcium. So that's an important one. You know, these are like basic structural, how do you build this baby? Calcium's one.
Okay.
Iron, like I talked about, that's often prenatal, but if you're really nauseous and you can't tolerate one with iron, sometimes you have to wait till later in pregnancy. And then, like I said, the iodine. Yeah, those are kind of some of the heavy hitters.
Okay. 2 things that you just mentioned in there that I do want to get to before you have to go and we knew this was going to be a lot of information that we probably weren't going to get to all of it. But the nausea.
Yes.
So when you want to, you've mentioned that it's really important to get that healthy diet in there, especially, before, during, and then continue on after baby. But a lot of people have a hard time eating healthy if they feel sick, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what's a good strategy to try to consume a healthy diet when you feel sick?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one is if you're very nauseous or pretty nauseous, one thing to do is not stress about it too much because most people feel better by something like 12 to 14 weeks. And then you can eat healthfully again. I was nauseous in both of my pregnancies. I ate different weird things in one versus the other. The first one was like saltines, ginger ale, lots of grapefruit. In this pregnancy, the beginning, I was eating potato chips, mashed potatoes, sour candies, like whatever you need to do to get through the day and get enough energy is the most important thing. So whatever you can tolerate is fine. Get enough energy to not lose weight, because some women lose weight in their first trimester because they're so ill. And then, that usually fades, and then after that you can get back to a healthy diet. So in my first pregnancy, I couldn't eat salad in my first trimester, and the second one I couldn't eat any cooked vegetables, but that goes away, and then I started eating normally again and stopped at the potato chips.
Okay.
I'm not to say I never eat potato chips, but not with the same frequency. So, everybody's got weird things. It's more about just getting through that period and trying not to throw up at work. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's important to hear from a registered and licensed dietitian nutritionist, that it's okay if it gets you through the day without throwing up on your clients, right?
And sometimes your prenatal multivitamin will make you sicker. So it's important to experiment with that. Just don't take it for a few days. If you feel better, then play around with it. Last thing at night is usually helpful. Sometimes people can't do the one with iron, so they'll do the gummy ones. Those do not have iron. That often makes people feel less sick. The other option is 2 Flintstones vitamins.
Oh.
There are different ways to get micronutrients, so don't let yours make you ill.
Okay, yeah, it's not worth it, whatever it takes to get you through the day.
Yep.
Another thing that you talked about is that you do work with a lot of vegetarians and vegans. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that that's a really hard way. When you're growing another person inside of you, you have to get these nutrients, but when you're on a restricted diet, whether it's by choice or whether it's for health reasons, what are some strategies you have for vegetarians, vegans, maybe people have celiac, whatever the case may be for dietary restrictions? What are some good ways and good strategies that you have for people with dietary restrictions to get the nutrients that they need?
So I think the first thing is to really figure out where you're at. One thing I like to do is use Super Tracker, which is the USDA's free tracking database for food. So you can go in, you can log in, create a profile, and then enter what you're eating. So if you do that for a few days, you can use that information and say, okay, yeah, I'm not getting enough calcium, or I'm not getting enough protein, and that can be really helpful. I think folks with special dietary restrictions during pregnancy, again, that's a great time to meet with somebody to make sure that you're getting adequate micronutrients and macronutrients. Protein can be hard on a vegan diet sometimes. So that's a good thing to do to get a specialized view. But I think tracking what you eat for a few days to really get a feel for it can be really helpful, especially with all those micronutrients I was talking about, which it's really hard to figure that out without putting it into a database and getting that information. But that will give you reports that will tell you all that stuff.
Okay, so use technology. It can be your friend.
Use technology, yeah, absolutely.
It can be overwhelming.
Use technology, meet with somebody, let other people do some of that work, because it's a lot.
I feel like it's overwhelming to just try to consume the nutrients for yourself, so add another party while you're trying to grow that. That can be overwhelming, so use people to your benefit. Before you go, I think another question some people often ask is there a recommended amount of weight that you should gain?
Sure.
In pregnancies, sometimes you have people like, oh, I gained too much weight, or I didn't gain enough weight. Is there a target amount of weight for people?
There is, yeah, and it basically depends on where you started your pregnancy. So if you were a normal weight to begin your pregnancy, so your BMI is between 18.5 and 25, right? So we're basing all of this on BMI.
Okay.
Then your ideal is to gain 25 to 35 pounds.
Okay.
If you're underweight to start, it's a little bit more, 28 to 40. Right? And if you're overweight or obese, those numbers go down a little bit. So basically, that's kind of the mid-range for healthy weight women or normal weight women. And then if you're heavier, then you don't need to gain quite so much.
Okay. Does it matter at all? I don't know. Does it matter at all the size of your baby, how much weight you gain and how much you don't gain?
It does matter, yeah, because certainly if you have an 8-pound baby versus a 6-pound baby, there's going to be an extra 2 pounds of baby in there. But there are a lot of other factors as well. Water retention is actually one of the big ones. So some women retain a lot of water during pregnancy. They get a lot of swelling, things like that. They're going to weigh more because that water weighs something.
Yeah.
If you don't have swelling, you don't have this extra fluid accumulating, then you won't gain weight from that reason. But weight gain it's pretty variable, and some of it has to do with what you're eating, absolutely, and sometimes it doesn't, like the water retention point. But that 25 to 35 pounds is all the necessary stuff for your baby. So the baby itself, placenta, that baby lives in a lot of water itself. So all of those things weigh 25 pounds at a minimum.
Interesting. Well, hopefully this has been helpful to so many people out there on both sides. And you are going to be having child number 2 here soon, so you're going to be back hopefully with us one more time, and then after that, enjoying being a mom.
1 or 2, and I'll be out for a few months, and I'll see you all in January.
Yes, so we're excited about that, taking the time to hopefully rest and then not rest at all. Okay, because with 2 kids, you will not be resting.
Not that much.
Not that much. So Shira, thank you so much for joining us.